weather modification company confirmed that planes in Texas did release silver iode into the atmosphere 2 days before the floods. But
after he just told you that, yes, this cloud seeding operation is spraying these harmful chemicals, these iodines, it doesn't mean that there's a connection between that. What are you doing?
Disruptive.
Weird thing to happen. So let's go into an update on Texas and the continuation of the floods, the mismanagement of the National Weather Service we discussed at length at the beginning of this. And it is more and more devastating as time is going on, as there's the bit of lack of response from the federal and state governments. They keep doing press conferences. We are seeing administrators just trying to cover up the fact that there was so mismanagement, that there wasn't people in response in coordinates to this situation. They knew that was coming and they didn't warn people right away. We have saw the devastation, and it's only getting worse, folks. So from the Weather Network, they said that death toll from Texas floods hits triple digits as tally of missing tops 180. And that's including the children that are still missing from that one Camp Mystic, that has been kind of like the highlight of this devastating flood, that this was an all-girls Christian camp, that many of the young children are still missing. The parents are worried. They don't know what's happening. They just recently found the, what do you call it, like the storage bins underneath the campers' bunks and lined them up in a row to highlight how many missing girls there are still in these devastating floods. And it looks like, according to the weather, according to reports and forecasting, that this rain is not easing up, that it doesn't look like there's promiscuity in sight. But here's even something more interesting that caught my attention. So this is from Beef Initiative. Clever name, interesting name. Beef Initiative says, breaking, federal agencies paid a private cloud seeding company to spray Texas skies just 2 days before deadly floods killed 60 plus people. No public comment, no oversight, no accountability. Call it weather modification, call it a conspiracy, but it's happening. And here he links to, this is the draft, this is the proposal where the federal government allowed this private company to operate their cloud seeding technology, go over the skies of Texas and spray these chemicals into the atmosphere. Look at this. You can see Plateau Underground Water Conservation and Supply District from El Dorado, Texas. Regular meetings, January 28, 2025. And you can see the highlighted part here. It says, consider and take action to approve the agreement for cloud seeding professional services between Rainmaker Technology Corporation and WTWMA members, consistent with the WTWMA Intercall, Interlocal Participation Agreement, and current program financial assessment. So this was the proposal that allowed a private company, this Rainmaker Technology Corporation, to spray over Texas days before the flooding occurred. It's very, very eye-opening. Just like how it was eye-opening after Hurricane Helene that took ravage on North Carolina, that's still a devastating mess that the federal government completely disresponded to and completely left them in despair, and still continues to. Trump pretty much told them to go pound sand at this point, even though we're supposed to be making America great again. So these natural disasters, every time we see new information being lifted onto social media and highlighting these, before the instant moments, it really, really is really amazing. And what's even more amazing is that even NBC confirms this. NBC News, of all places. This is not Alex Jones. This is not a conspiracy website. It's not Tucker Carlson mentioning this to one of his friends. This is NBC News confirming that cloud seeding operations were conducted 2 days before the Texas floods. But what the interesting part is that NBC is going to confirm that, yes, cloud seeding was used in Texas right before the floods, explain to you what cloud seeding technology does in the creation of flooding, but then immediately dismisses it at the end of the segment, which is probably the most hilarious you can get from mainstream media when they already told you and explained to you the concept of cloud seeding and the cause of the mass amounts of rain in devastating areas, has to try and cover it up because, again, this is NBC News. But watch how they tried to explain it and then cover it up.
Times you might have seen posts or videos connecting cloud seeding to what is happening in Texas. And then earlier tonight, the CEO of a weather modification company confirmed that planes in Texas did release silver iode into the atmosphere 2 days before the floods. But he also explained why he says scientifically that does not mean that the two events are connected. Watch this.
It doesn't mean it's connected. It doesn't mean that there's a connection between that. What are you doing? Why are you reading between the lines? Trust the science. After he just told you that, yes, this cloud seeding operation is spraying these harmful chemicals, these iodines, these substances into these clouds, creating artificial cloud formation that causes a lot more rainfall because these chemicals evaporates more water than natural occurrence. But no, don't conflate the two. Come on.
Talking about like sub-centimeter amounts of precipitation, be it in snow or rain from every event, which in aggregate can mean hundreds of acre feet, which is very consequential for farmers and ecosystems, but cannot come close to causing flooding unto itself.
And NBC News climate reporter Chase Kane joins us now. Chase, any conspiracy always starts with like a thread of truth here. Can you explain the science? Like, what is cloud seeding, first off, and how is it being used in Texas?
Yeah, so cloud seeding is really this idea for farmers of like, hey, there's some moisture up there in the clouds. Is there a way that we can get it out of the clouds down here to the surface to help farmers? Because water vapor that's in the air needs something to grab onto, which is often like smaller than the tip of a pen. So you're thinking like pollens, particles of pollen or dust or even air pollution. So you see this graphic here. Basically what they do is they fly planes up there to give the water vapor something to grab onto. So it's a combination of silver iodide and salt, actually. And so the water vapor forms around that. Eventually it gets heavy enough and then falls to the surface of rain. So when that happens.
So he's telling us that there's silver iodine and salt being sprayed into the clouds. Now, I'm not a meteorologist. I'm not a farmer. I'm not some sort of magical wizard that can predict this. But isn't salt harmful to crops? Isn't salt harmful to vegetation? I kind of remember in history at one point that they used to salt fields of certain areas as an act of warfare. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that was a moment of history where they acted upon aggression to salt the lands to make sure that nothing will ever grow. So that's somehow beneficial to farmers. That's somehow beneficial to agricultural land. By the way, the same agricultural land that's being bought up by billionaires to turn into super factories to make goo into organic paste.
We're talking really small amounts of rain. In fact, scientists have been debating for decades whether or not this is actually very effective to do. So even when it does work, Gotti, we're not talking about a lot of rain, certainly not the amount of rain that they saw in Texas last week.
And the timing of it, 2 days before, I mean, you know, again, anybody online that seems to be an expert these days would say, well, no, this is what, you know, started the flood or possibly like supercharged the soil so it was hydrophobic. Like, well, take us through the timeline here.
Yeah, that's a really important point, Gotti, because this cloud seeding, it works within like 15 minutes, half an hour, maybe an hour, and then that's it. So that was done 2 days before. So the CEO is saying this. Other scientific research establishes that cloud seeding isn't going to trigger something like this, certainly not 2 days after they were doing it. They were only up in the air cloud seeding for about 20 minutes because, again, it's targeted to a pretty small area of land, which was not even over where the worst of this flooding was, Gotti. So we're talking 30 minutes to an hour, certainly not 2 days in advance.
Yeah, it just can't happen. It just can't happen. I mean, yes, you had the technology. Yes, there's iodine and salts being poured into the atmosphere, which is causing harm and damage to the natural environment. But no, there's no correlation between that and the mass amount of rainfall that fell on Texas, that months of rain spontaneously fell in just a matter of minutes. There's no correlation to that. There's no need to investigate. I mean, come on. These people on the internet that are researching things, come on. What is this, COVID? Trust the science. Remember? Trust the science. So then it leads me to this article here, which I found this fascinating. So The Atlantic pointed this out, and it says, playing God with the atmosphere. Interfering with Earth's climate systems is becoming more possible and less predictable than ever. And seeing that and seeing the mass amount of use that they're now bragging about, because this is now out in the open. This is not a conspiracy at this point if they're bragging about it on national television, that yes, they are manipulating nature. They're manipulating the natural order of things to create these weather patterns that become catastrophic. And that is devastating. So, in hindsight, maybe we should give ourselves half brownie points for saying that, yes, climate change does exist. Climate change is man-made. But it's not because people are eating burgers or driving their cars or using a gas-powered lawnmower or using a wood fire to cook pizza. It's because, man, these psychopathic men and women, I don't want to be sexist here, these psychopaths are trying to play God. They're trying to disrupt the natural order of things to create these devastating patterns that human nature cannot control, cannot deal with. When you have this amount of rain falling at such a short rate, it is devastating. And the natural order of things cannot respond properly to this. Hence why Texas is flooding. Hence why when they try to do this in Dubai, which is a desert region, it flooded like crazy. Oh, we're just going to get some water to them because they need to flourish. They need greenery over in a desert area. So let's put some clouds out there. Let's do some cloud seeding over Dubai. And then guess what happened? It completely flooded. Why? Because nature cannot deal with the modifications made by these psychopaths. And it is just insane. It is insane that they can go on TV and brag about this, and yet places like NBC News still want you to believe that it's still a conspiracy. Oh, it's made up. Oh, it's these lunatics on the internet. You just confirmed in the same segment that cloud seeding does exist, that it does cause mass amounts of rainfall, that it could potentially cause this flooding. But no, don't correlate the two. Don't look into things. Ooh, don't do research. So, Marjorie Taylor Greene put this out. Marjorie Taylor Greene, who I've probably the only person I've seen so far, maybe Thomas Massey to some extent, but this is so far the only person I have seen actually mentioning about this. So she says, I'm introducing a bill that prohibits the injection, release, or dispersion of chemicals or substances into the atmosphere for the express purpose of altering weather, temperature, climate, or sunlight intensity. It will be a felony offense. I have been researching weather modification and working with the Legislative Council for months writing this bill. It will be similar to Florida Senate Bill 56, We must end the dangerous and deadly practice of weather modification and geoengineering. The fact that we even have to have this bill because of just how far this has gone. And this is, unfortunately, this is not new technology. This weather modification and the ability to have the technology to disrupt climate patterns or cover the sun or deal with temperature, this has been going on for decades. This has been going on for decades. And the fact that we have to have a bill to stop these maniacs from doing this shows how messed up the world really is. Shows you how messed up the world is. And seeing bills like this kind of reminds me of when people talked about like how bad Russia is. Oh, Vladimir Putin and Russia, it's such a evil place. Like they don't allow gay people, blah, 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 and all this other stuff. Yeah, you could say what you want about Russia, but did you know that it's Russian federal law that you can't have GMO products, meaning that corporations cannot inject harmful substances into plants, into vegetables, into fruit. They call it an act of terrorism, which in reality, it kind of is. You're putting harmful chemicals into the agricultural supply that's feeding your towns and cities all across Russia. No doubt that would be an act of terrorism. You're poisoning your people. So why is Russia putting federal bans and making themselves healthier, but here in the West, we don't even bother with it? We don't even bother with it, and we know what's happening. We know it's happening. It's not a conspiracy when they blurt it out in the public. Bill Gates blurted out, obviously, that he's doing GMOs. That's why he's buying all this agricultural land. He's injecting livestock with mRNA vaccines. He's putting wax coatings on fruits and vegetables. We know this. It's not a conspiracy. We know this. So why are we just allowing this to happen? Why are we allowing ourselves to be chemically endued by these heinous oligarchs and corporations and then being lied to say that that's a conspiracy to mention it? It's just so insane. So, like I said, this has been going on for decades. And someone pointed this out. This is from 9 years ago. This is broadcast on CBS. So someone representing geoengineering, a scientist, went on to CBS on a morning show nationwide and bragged about how they were spraying these harmful chemicals into the atmosphere for years. And they're proud to do it. Now they have the initiative of doing this because of climate change. But you're going to see why it's a completely different tone when this first came about. So this is from 9 years ago on CBS, where they openly announced that, yeah, we're doing geoengineering. We're doing weather modification. This is for the good of people, apparently.
They were talking about climate change yesterday, and now we're learning that scientists and researchers are looking at how to change the weather on purpose. That's right. Lasers now could one day manipulate rain and lightning. CBS This Morning contributor Michio Kaku is a physics professor at City College of New York. Professor, nice to see you. Extraordinary seeing Al Gore and Bill Clinton there together with Charlie, wasn't it?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, they did not get into this discussion, though. But it is fascinating. I mean,
they didn't get into this discussion. They're laughing about the fact that the people that scream the loudest about the environment never talk about this. Is that kind of interesting? All the years they talk about global warming, they talk about climate change, they talk about pollutants in the air and the atmosphere. They put the finger at you. Barack Obama flew his private jet to Africa to tell a bunch of African civilians that they can't have air conditioning, even though he bought a 48-acre estate in Martha's Vineyard on top of the 3 other properties that he owns. Is it kind of funny that they don't mention about weather modification? Isn't it amazing that they don't talk about the harmful pollutants that they're already putting into the air to stop climate change? Isn't that kind of counterproductive? You're putting more toxins into the air to make the air cleaner. How does that make sense? How does that make sense? But Al Gore gets, an Oscar for it. Al Gore gets, praised for it. Bill Gates is considered a scientist, even though he never graduated college, and tells you we're not planting trees. It's worthless to plant trees to deal with climate change. When any person with basic understanding of biology, if anyone's ever passed first grade, can tell you that plants are necessary for the survival of Earth. So yes, planting trees, planting crops would be beneficial. More beneficial than you taking your private jet to all these different areas and having meetings about how to control people. But let's see the rest of this.
Lasers? Really? To change the weather?
That's right. Well, as Mark Twain once famously said, everyone complains about the weather, but no one ever does anything about it. Well, instead of doing a rain dance, we physicists are firing trillion-watt lasers into the sky to actually precipitate rain clouds and actually bring down lightning bolts. This is potentially a game changer.
But this is experimental.
It's experimental. However, in the laboratory so far, it works. When you have water vapor and you have dust particles or ice crystals, you can precipitate rain. It condenses around the seeds. These seeds can also be created by laser beams. By firing trillion-watt lasers, you rip apart the electrons, creating what are called ions, and these ions act like seeds, like dust particles, bringing down rain and even lightning.
Go ahead.
Well, this fascinates me in part because, too, I remember reading the stories that China had used this during the Olympics, that the USSR had used this after Chernobyl to create rain clouds. I mean, did those really work then? We have some of these capabilities now?
Inconclusive. Even in the 60s.
So, it's been going on for years. It's been going on for years. This is not a mystery. This is not a conspiracy. This is not Alex Jones ranting about it. This is a top scientist bragging about on national television on a morning show about, yeah, we have this technology where we just shoot lasers into clouds and it creates rain, and sometimes the rain goes overboard. So what? So what? It's experimental. It's experimental 9 years ago, and they're still doing it. But the interesting part about this, which is why I pulled this up. This is from the AAAS, or the American Association for the Advancement of Science. Now, why did I bring an article from them up? Is because they said, despite past failures, weather modification endures. This is an article from December 31st, 2012. And it says, for centuries, there have been attempts to manipulate the weather, from ancient rituals designed to bring rain to modern-day cloud seeding, but there are some past attempts where pseudoscientific at best, weather modification continues to gain ground in an effort to solve some of the world's most devastating weather-related problems. Weather modification includes the attempts to create more rain, prevent rain, reduce hail, prevent fog, make snow, or reduce the severity of a hurricane, although often used to create more precipitation in drought-prone regions. In some cases, weather modification has been used as a matter of convenience more than a necessity. The Chinese government credited weather modification for assuring good weather for the 2008 Olympics. Rockets were used to reduce rain by cloud seeding other areas in an attempt to keep the rain away from Beijing, specifically during the opening and closing ceremonies. The fact the Beijing Meteorological Bureau has a Beijing Weather Modification Office dedicated to controlling the weather in the city and surrounding areas. Cloud seeding was discovered by accident in July of 1946. So this has been going on since the 40s. Not just recently. Not just recently. This has been going on since the 40s. And what's significant about the 40s? What's significant about that time period? Oh, yeah, World War II. where they used bioweapons and weather modification as a use of warfare. So this is what I mean. This is what I mean when I say this has been going on for decades. This is not nothing new. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is not rantings on the internet. They've been using this technology for decades. And up until recently, it's been used as an act of warfare. It's been used aggressively against other countries, against other nations. But now they changed the tone. They rebranded the weather modification to say, oh, we're fighting climate change. By what? Changing the climate. July 1946 by scientist Vincent Schaefer, who was conducting a laboratory experiment at General Electric Research Labs in New York. He was trying to produce a cloud in a chest freezer, but it wasn't cold enough. So he put slabs of dry ice or solid carbon dioxide in a freezer to cool it. To his surprise, he found that when he breathed into the air, it created snow crystals. Only a month later, his colleague, Bernard Vonnegut, older brother of writer Kurt Vonnegut, discovered another method for seeding using silver iodine crystals. In November of that year, dry ice pellets were dropped by a plane to supercooled cloud, one that contains water in liquid form colder than the freezing point over Massachusetts. Reportedly, it snowed only out of that proportion of the cloud. Today, silver iodine and dry ice are the most common chemicals used for seeding. The chemicals is introduced into the cloud, which induces the formation of ice crystals by providing the nuclei for water to compensate. Liquid propane is sometimes also used, which turns into a gas at cold temperatures, freezing the surrounding air so that crystals form spontaneously out of the vapor. Weather modification has been used in warfare. And they're bragging about today as a defense against climate change. Technology that was used purposely for warfare. They're bragging about, we're saving the planet. The UK government is organizing and passed legislation to add more chemicals into the atmosphere, claiming that it's going to protect us, that we don't get much sunlight. It's going to protect us. It's going to help humanity. It's going to stop climate change by doing what? Changing the climate. Between 1949 and 1952, Operation Cumulus was an attempt by the British government to learn to control the weather via cloud seeding, primarily for future military advantage. However, on August 16, 1952, a severe flood in the town of Lynmouth occurred after 9 inches of rain fell in 24 hours. Interesting. But I was told by NBC News to not conflate the two, that there's no possible way that cloud seeding could cause flooding. No doubt. No. Don't believe those crazy conspiracy nuts. That's crazy that this company, using technology that the military used to cause flooding, would cause a flood in, say, Texas or Dubai or any other region where we have seen weather modification used. The infrastructure was damaged and 34 lives were lost. Although no evidence was found that Project Cumulus was to blame, the project was abandoned after the event. Right. From March 1967 to July 1972, Operation Popeye. Where do they get these names? Operation Popeye involved cloud seeding by the U.S. military in an attempt to extend the monsoon season over North Vietnam and Laos, specifically over the Ho Chi Minh Trail, which was used to funnel North Vietnamese soldiers and supplies to South Vietnam. The targeted areas reportedly saw a longer monsoon season by 30 to 45 days. So there you go, folks. The idea that possibly this could have been a weather modification stunt done to do some sort of insane warfare to ravaged areas of Texas now that are dealing with this devastation, that still have missing people, that they didn't alert people properly, could have ultimately been all calculated. This could have been not an accident, not a natural occurrence, that a natural disaster like this could have been assisted, let's just say, assisted by the federal government, the same federal government that is cutting and gutting the ability to deal with natural disasters. They're cutting back on FEMA. They're cutting back on the National Weather Service. Hence why many of these people in Texas did not receive alerts. Because in order to receive an alert, you have to have someone at the chair to release those messages, to release that alert. It doesn't happen magically on your phone. Someone is behind the desk reporting on this, looking at the forecast, and then has to make the decision to release the alert. But since the Trump administration, since DOGE pretty much disbarred the National Weather Service, disbarred any resources to deal with natural events, and then all of a sudden this comes about, and they are now coming to conclusion that, yeah, days before there was a cloud seeding operation, and then surprise, surprise, a flood came about. Who would have predicted that? If only we had some sort of evidence of historical events that constantly have seen this numerous times before and before. But it's a conspiracy. We're not allowed to talk about it. God forbid. Don't do your research. Trust the science. Trust the makers of, what is it called? Rainmaker technology. Like that isn't an obvious giveaway. Why don't you just call yourself the Flood Masters 2000? Give me a break. Give me a break. But they want to say it's a conspiracy. They want to say it's a conspiracy, but we know, you look at history, you look at periodic events, you look at the natural ordinance of things, something like this definitely is not natural. So, half brownie points. Climate change does happen. It's just made by psychotic men and women with this technology to alter the climate, and not in the benefit of humanity, but to use it as a means of warfare against humanity.